A refreshing refreshments break. So I would like to invite up one of our panelists, Ozan Ozerk, who's the founder of OpenPayd, and I believe our second panelist will be joining us on Zoom, and he has joined us on Zoom. Wonderful. Niraj Naetsawan, who's the Middle East General Manager for Additiv. You want to join me here?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? I think we might need to. I sort of vaguely got you, so I suspect we need our technicians to get your volume up a little bit. Can you say something again? Yeah, wonderful, perfect. We can hear you loud and clear. Nice to have you with us. So maybe first of all, Niraj, can I ask you sort of for a little bit of a brief explanatory note on what embedded finance is exactly? Again, we have an array of people interested in the financial services and coming from the financial services sector, but to give everyone a clear idea of what the panel will be talking about, I suspect that might be a good way to start. Thank you. That was very, very clear and snappy. So that's we always like that. The Economist is all about concision. Ozan, so can I ask you a sort of a follow-up question? So, you know, everyone here in the room, I'm pretty sure, is familiar with the fact that you can, you know, pay for things online. Many probably have a PayPal account. You know, many have bought things on Amazon. Nowadays, maybe many have bought things via Instagram.
Yeah.
So, how is the way that you see embedded finance, and what OpenPayd does, for instance, different to what PayPal does, or what Stripe does, or what Square does?
Well, first of all, we connect various payment providers and different payment rails through a single API or a single connection to our clients. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to help companies that are either financial service providers themselves or non-financial service providers to being able to consume and provide financial services. So basically, anything to do with banking and payment, as much as possible, should happen in the background with zero friction. It's like when you take an Uber ride, your payments happens in the background. You don't look for your card, you don't look for your PIN code, you don't expect any other service to be interacting with your journey. It just happens in the background. So OpenPayd as an embedded financial service provider, or what we often call a banking as a service provider, we're helping various type of companies help their client consume financial services.
Can you give us an example of some companies, even if you can't name them, or feel free to name
them?
No,
I can name one. I saw Crypto.com have a stand out there. If you go to Europe or in the UK and you want to send money or receive money from Crypto.com or benefit from their fiat wallet, that wallet and that service is provided by OpenPayd. And we have a lot of other examples also in other type of industries, which is not the cryptocurrency industry.
So Niraj, can I ask you sort of how prevalent is this embedded finance at the moment? Because again, because it's happening in the background, it's possible that it's sort of, and if it is indeed frictionless, then we don't see it or we don't notice it as end users. So how widespread is it at the moment? And then we can get to how widespread it could become. Thank you. Ozan, so how often are we using embedded finance today without sort of necessarily realizing that that is what we're doing?
In our daily life, we encounter embedded financial services when we interact with our bank, with our traditional marketplaces, our airline, and in a lot of other, especially online services. But we are in a very, very early stage of embedded finance and banking as a service. Just think about your previous week.
So you said banking as a service?
Yes.
Isn't banking a service?
Banking as a service.
I understand that, but I mean, it's a sort of, it's a bit of a, it seems almost tautological.
Yes, so basically, when you are receiving banking-like services from a non-bank,
right? Okay.
we try to.
I'm being a little bit.
No, I understand. I understand. Listen, we still use cash, we still use our card, and we still have to very often actively engage whenever it comes to payment. It do not happen in the background. So 20 years ago, when you went online, you had to log on to the internet. Today, you just go on the internet. Yeah. And if you look at payments the same way, we're still in a very, very early stage. Regulation is not properly there. Technology is not properly there. Trust and user behavior are still not there. You have examples of companies with successful usage of embedded finance, but still, I still carry my wallet, I still carry my credit card, I still have to carry cash from time to time. So there is still a long way before we have a fully integrated embedded financial service community.
Are there any parts of the world where it is more widespread? I mean, the one place that comes to mind immediately is China,
yep.
which sort of has a version of embedded finance
yep.
with the ubiquitous payments apps, WeChat, Pay, and Alipay.
Yeah, so those type of apps are often referred to as super apps. They have anything from lifestyle services to healthcare services, and including payment services. How those apps are, how to put it nicely, I don't think liberal democracies can have those type of services on those premises that we see in certain countries, as in China. From a data protection point of view and other type of challenges, I don't advocate those type of services. But there's a huge gap between what we have in the UK or in the US today and what China is already doing. There is the reality for me, or the sweet spot, is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I think with sort of adopting the Chinese model elsewhere in the world, one of the reasons, I think you're absolutely right on the sort of constraints, especially in liberal democracies, but also there's just a sort of historical constraint, which is that the West already has certain ways that people are used to.
Yeah.
People have bank accounts, people have credit cards, they're used to using those services, and services which are sort of at least superficially a bit like them.
Yeah.
Whereas China sort of leapfrogged all that with the payments app, and was able to do that because there was no established incumbent infrastructure. Right. And whereas you guys are trying to build on top of often, an established infrastructure, which is in many ways much more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, in large part of the world, you have Visa and MasterCard dominating the card network, and then you have strong local banks that are dominating the banking industry either locally or regionally or globally. So when you come in as an embedded financial service provider, you have to kind of look at what is already there, what kind of habits, what kind of user interactions are people used to, and then you have to build on top of that, or by integrating existing services. So it's not like in, let's say, in China, where people went from having zero financial services to having the state-of-the-art financial services in the less of 10 years.
Niraj, can I ask you, like, where do you see, which part of the world do you see as being most advanced in adopting embedded finance at the moment, and what can other parts of the world learn from those pioneering areas? Ozan, it's like when it comes to making this more widespread than it is at the moment, and sort of maybe focus specifically on this region. We were talking earlier. You said that you're going to be back in Dubai. You fly in and out of the region quite often. So, what are the biggest obstacles to more speedy adoption of these solutions? Is it a question of regulation? Is it a question of sort of consumer trust? Is it a question of the necessary sort of digital infrastructure? What's stopping this from becoming much bigger, much more quickly?
All the points you mentioned are critical. There are still friction. So there is still lack of regulation, or even if there is good regulation, there is lack of good implementation of that regulation. There is still lack of investment in the space, and there's also still a challenge getting a broader audience to adopt those products and services. So let's say you are in Dubai and you're using Grab or any other service locally. You are only going to interact with the financial services a bit because you have a local super app giving you another service. So, especially in the Middle East, there's still unclear regulation, lack of adoption from consumers, and also lack of tech investment that will enable these type of embedded services to prosper.
So when you say tech investment, do you mean investment in like technological infrastructure, or do you mean investment in sort of an ecosystem of companies that provide some of the underlying services?
Yeah, so first of all, you need digital services, for instance, marketplaces and other type of services that people consume. And then when they're consuming this service, the embedded finance bit reduces the friction in relation to the payment. Or it helps us grab more data so we can get a more personalized offering on your marketplace. But if you don't have the marketplace or the adoption of usage of that marketplace, the embedded finance bit becomes obsolete.
That's interesting. I mean, I was, Niraj, I was going to ask you maybe to tell us a little bit about how sort of the private sector efforts, like those of OpenPayd and Additiv, sort of how they compare and contrast with things that, for instance, India's government has done with with a sort of nationwide, national, digital financial infrastructure that they're building. Is Additiv, as it were, on top of the sort of Aadhaar stack, or is it a competitor to it? So how would it work in a place like, obviously this is in India, but like there are other countries which are sort of India is trying to export this idea of having an underlying nationalized digital infrastructure. So, Ozan, so on bringing more people into the system, I mean, OpenPayd talks a lot about reaching the underbanked and the underserved.
Yep.
So, how do you need the people using the service to actually have some sort of a connection already with the existing financial system? Do they need a bank account? Do they need a credit card? Or are there ways to sort of bypass that, which would enable more widespread adoption by people who do not have access or have not established access to the traditional financial system?
Well, in an ideal world, you already have a banking relationship. You have a bank account where you can send and receive money before you kind of come to our services. But given that you don't have a bank account, we are able to provide you with the bank account. So let's say you come from abroad to the UK or the European Union or somewhere else, and you start consuming some of the services that we provide embedded financial services to. So let's say you sign up with crypto.com and you don't have a bank account from before, we will be able to provide you a bank account.
So the company will set you up with a bank account?
Yes.
So you have a banking license?
No, we have an e-money license, but we also work with banks in the background that will issue the bank account. So depending on the usage of the account, we will allow you to transact like a normal bank, as well as getting a bank account.
Right. Well, so that is incredible. And has that a lot of uptake of that offer? Like, have people sort of come and have opened a lot of bank accounts?
Yeah, we have opened millions of bank accounts because usually what we are trying to do for our clients is to make them become a mini bank so they can hold on to their clients, upsell other services, and also grab more data from their consumers to provide even a better service.
And Niraj, I mean, I think unfortunately we're running out of time, but this has been a fascinating conversation. I would like to sort of maybe ask one last question, and that is on the sort of regulatory side. When you're trying to introduce these services, additive services in various jurisdictions, what are the sort of biggest regulatory obstacles? And are governments receptive to the idea that this should be more widespread, or are they still quite cautious? Famously, financial regulation tends to be quite strict everywhere in the world. Thank you both. Unfortunately, we are out of time now. So a round of applause for our speakers. Thank you, Niraj, for joining us remotely. Thank you, Ozan, for making it here. And I'll hand over to Lavina for the next session. I think we need our customary photo here.